This is Nina Lockwood. Welcome to Get Your Happy Back. Stories and insights that will inspire you to find new sources of happiness in your own life. Do you think you're not very creative? Well, I bet that's not true. And today, my guest Joelle Lydon and I talk about the nature of creativity and how it expresses itself and how it can actually really change your life. Hey, welcome to Get Your Happy Back. And today I'm with Joelle Lydon. Hi, Joelle.
How are you?
Oh, another day in paradise.
Yay.
So today we're going to do kind of an unusual walkabout, if you will. We are going to spend a little bit of time talking about the nature of creativity and how Joelle uses that. And then we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about how her creativity infuses her work as a relationship coach, as an artist, as a creative arts expressive practitioner. Probably
Mm.
added an extra word in there, but we'll just see how it evolves. So, my first question is going to be, how do you define creativity?
I love this question. So I'm going to go spiritual with you. For me, creativity is a deep connection with the divine, and is this space that is consciously and sometimes unconsciously created, where a sense of deep um, honoring is happening for whatever is coming through. So the creative process really feels like a connection to the divine. For me, that's how I would define it.
And how do you define divine?
Love that. There is a somatic experience for me of what divine is like. And for me, the sensations are of opening and flow.
Mm,
There is no barriers, there's no obstacles, there are no niggly bits that are interfering with my ability to be in the process of whatever it
mm.
is I'm creating. Not to say that when I do get tripped up or I do get into a gnarly bit, that the divine is not there also serving and supporting the going over, under, around, through the gnarly bit, but that there is just this sense of like open space. And I would
Mm.
also say, so that's more of a sort of physiological experience. And I would also then say mentally, a quieter mind.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. When was it in your life that you first realized that there was a difference between creative expression and just logic and analysis in going through your life?
Such an interesting question because I'm trying to think, okay, so when I was a little girl, I used to doodle a lot and make little cartoons. And um, might sound strange, but back when I was a little girl, I was probably about 5 years old, and we had just arrived pretty pretty early on, had arrived in South America. My family moved to South America in 1968 to Chile. And for a little bit of time, I went to what must have been a Montessori school. And I remember loving math. And the reason I loved math wasn't because there were numbers involved, but because with this particular instructor or this particular methodology, there were little sticks, and they weren't sticks, they were like these little, they're like little sticks of different sizes and colors, but each one representing like a concept. And so that was like the first time, I guess, I had never thought of it in this way, where art and logic kind of came together. Like I could see that these two things were of a piece. And then the distinction for me came when somebody threw numbers at me. And all of a sudden, this thing that made so much logical sense to my mind, like color and size and playing with my hands, moving it with my hands, felt like, right, math makes complete sense. And then these number things, I can't touch them. I can't move them. They have no, like, yes, they have shape and yes, they have meaning, but there's like no way of really interacting with them in any kind of way. So I guess I had never thought of this before in this way, but that would be the first experience for me seeing the distinction between creativity and logic.
Interesting, especially with mathematics.
I know. I love that you asked that question.
Well, you're very welcome. So, when you think about your life, how would you say that finding and learning to express creativity has changed your life or shaped it?
So, in family, biological family, family of origin, we had very defined, ascribed roles. I was the dancer. My sister was the pianist. My mother could do both, but she was also the artist. And so I grew up being told that I needed to stay in my lane. So that dance was my thing. Although I loved to doodle, although I could play the piano by ear, that was, not the expression that was allowed for me. And it wasn't really until I went through the process of going through the expressive arts training and practices and therapy, that I was able to pull all those pieces together for myself. The artist, the singer, the poet, the writer, the dancer, the artist, all of those pieces became a part of me in a more integrated way and in a way that felt like a reclamation.
Mm. I think that is such a wonderful adaptation that you managed to do with all of those different components. And it's made me wonder how many people go through their lives having some areas of their life where they are more creative, they are more expressive, but it gets subsumed, if you will, under the daily activities and responsibilities in life. So, given the fact that you were able to bring all of these things together, what would you say to someone who might say, well, I used to be more creative, but I just I don't have time for it anymore, or it doesn't seem to fit the lifestyle I have. What would you say to them?
I'm going to go Mary Kondo on you, Nina. Uh, because I think part of it is remembering how much joy it brought
Yeah.
to us, right? Being able to engage in that, whatever that creative form was. And it could be that creative in the traditional sense as we think of creativity, but it also could look like, problem solving and critical thinking and just being able to, I don't know, pull a car apart and putting it back together again can bring people great joy, right? So I really want to expand the definition of what creativity is.
Yeah.
But I would say the first step is just remembering the joy it brought. And then the second step would be to be in this living inquiry of what would my life look like if I could bring that into my life now?
Mhm.
How would me engaging in this thing that brought me so much joy as a child, how would it enhance the way that I approach my relationships? How would it enhance the way that I approach my work? How would it enhance the way that I interact with people in my community? How would it enhance my purpose and calling in this lifetime?
Yeah. That's a perfect answer to as a segue to a question that I was going to ask you, which was, um, what are some of the creative choices that you make for your life now that continue to bring you joy?
I'm current, so several, because I'm still a dancer. So one of the creative choices that I make a number of times a week is that I dance. That is just still, I still get such delight and such joy of moving my body with abandon. The other choice I would say is bringing things to the canvas. So you and I had a conversation earlier this week, and I said, I'm just like, I've got this painting downstairs and I'm not going to it after that conversation. And maybe all I needed to do was say something to you about it. I'm back at that painting, right? And then all of a sudden I'm finding delight down there in my studio. And then last night I found myself, and I recognized I hadn't done this in a really, really long time, where I made myself a cup of tea. So it's the end of the day, made myself a cup of tea. My husband's in the kitchen prepping dinner and whatever for the week. And I just had a piece of classical music on. And I was just staring out the window, listening to the music. And that, just so those are like three little touch point moments where I sort of infuse my day, my week with the things that feel nourishing.
That's a great word to use. And I think that one of the reasons I enjoy doing this podcast so much is I get to talk to people like you who are actively engaged in using faculties other than the logical mind. And most of us have gotten so used to that, using that capacity of our brain. And to be able to say to someone, well, this is what Joelle does. How could you do something similar? And I think we need more of, so that people are, I mean, if we're just worker bees coming and going in and out of the hive, where is our essence? Where is our true nature? Where is our joy? So I'm glad that we're having this conversation, because I'm also wondering how you would say a person changes when they start to incorporate more creative or artistic endeavors in their life. What changes?
A greater sense of self trust.
Hmm. Say more about that.
So we'll go back to the story of the math as art with the little pieces of wood versus math as concept, logical, mathematical. Um, I think there are moments in our formative years, socialized training, where we are trained out of trusting the aspects of ourselves, where we are experiencing those moments that spark joy, when we um, involved ourselves in projects just because, and placed more emphasis on that socialized training of being a worker bee, of having usefulness,
Mhm.
of being productive and earning gold stars. It's a slippery slope because earning gold stars feels good.
Of course.
It also, my sense is, and I've and I recognize this through the work that I do with my clients, the relationship work that I do with my clients, is that sort of slotting yourself to fit the mold has you mistrust you
Mm-hmm.
because you are not showing up as you.
Mm-hmm.
You're showing up as the person who produces, does, whatever, ticks all the boxes, right? But doesn't have that essence of, again, who you were as a child.
Oh, I love that answer. I think, and I agree with you. I think that the more we just do what's expected of us, the less we, the less we know who we are. I mean, all of us have heard many times over people say, they get to a certain point in their lives and they say, I don't even know who I am anymore. I've been playing this role for so many years. The person in the career, the parent, the spouse, the sibling, the who am I now? And I think, and it sounds like you're saying something similar, is that the more we let ourselves express who we really are, per that personal expression, that's how we get the self-trust and the sense of, yeah, I can do this because I've been able to do this. I've been able to think outside the box. I've been able to say, what else is possible here? What else can I do with this? But if I'm just checking the boxes, you're right. I think that I agree. We just become someone that's outward facing more than inward facing.
Right. I speak about it with my clients as having inside eyes and outside eyes.
Mm,
Um, I would add to what you shared because I think it's easy to say, well, all that is required is for us to just start expressing ourselves, right?
right.
And just like start doing it. And then before we know it, we're like performing we're like an actor, we're acting different. Like we think we're performing. I mean, we think we're being authentic, but we're just performing. I think there's this middle space between the honest, genuine, sincere expression and that sort of training that we've had, which is this liminal space of pause, silence, where no other data except what your inner eyes can see
Hmm.
is the information that you allow. So that is is a discipline. It's a commitment. It takes time, energy, consciousness, dedication, um, and it's well worth it. But it's not an immediate, I'm going to go from this socialized training to this
Hmm.
performative expression. What's missing is the centerpiece of like to inform that expression is the quiet space of who am I? If I
Right.
don't know who I am anymore, because I've been a mother and a, fill in the blank with the industry that you've been engaged in for
Hmm.
the next, last number of years. Like if I'm not that, then who am I? And then recognizing it's like I contain multitudes. Who said
Hmm.
that?
Whitman, I think,
Whitman, thank you.
or
I couldn't
unless it's Emerson.
No, no, I think you're right. I think it was Whitman, but it's just like to be in the space of like, what are the multitudes that I contain? Because it's really easy to say like, well, I am this one person, and that's not well in this context that might be true, but
Yeah.
stick you in a different context, you express differently, right? So being in giving that sort of space to hang out in that liminal cocoon to define the multitudes for yourself, to even discover, uncover, unpack what those are for you. So then you can step by step, because again, it's not all big expression. You can begin to slowly and in very um, comfortable ways, comfortable for you, right? Begin to expand that expression so it's more and more true.
Hmm. Right. So I would like to shift gears a little bit and move more into what you do in the work that you do, and starting off by asking you something about the if and tell me if I'm not labeling this correctly, the intuitive painting that you do
Mhm.
with people. Talk a little bit about that and how you see that expressing people's inner world.
So I think you're referring to intentional creativity. Um, so I use a combination of intentional creativity as well as expressive arts, and I'm also just listening to what's emerging for a client, really. Um, so I can go in there with a lesson plan. I come from an education background, so there you go. I go in there with a lesson plan, and then it starts the process, but then things pop up, and so I just follow the smell of that, if
Right.
you will. So the intentional creativity process is, so how do I use it? So with my one-on-one clients, I create small, so there are four elements that I use with my clients when I'm working with them. One of them is, of course, coaching, accountability. I've also created tons of modality modules for them. So whenever I've seen clients having difficulty with particular things, I'm noticing a trend, I'll create a training for that. So the education is still very much a part of that. And then creative processes. And so these creative processes are, when I'm working one on one with a client, are intended to be intuitive, but are high sensitivity, low technology, right? Require no artistic talent whatsoever. And the intention of those activities are to sort of bypass the thinking mind so we can come to
Hmm.
insight. Instead of working with the thing that we think we need to be working with, we work with the thing that's actually emerging. And then we create around that. When I'm working with, say, a couple, I will use the creative process. And I also do this in retreats as well when I'm working with large groups of people, is that I will use the canvas as the place that the space holder for the relationship, where both couples are working on it simultaneously. And I can be watching their bodies based on the intention that they go to the canvas with. I can watch their bodies to see if they're meeting their intention, or at what point have they hit the eject button from the intention and move to a different thing. So I can stop them and double click in that moment, because that's the moment typically at home where there's a disconnect,
Hmm.
there is a pulling away, where there is a, you know, we say we're going to do this thing, but then we fall back into old habits thing.
Right.
So that's usually how I use the creative process for individual and for, as I said, couples, and for my retreat clients.
And when you are painting intuitively or you're having your clients painting intuitively, do you think that they're expressing something they already know or discovering something new?
Discovering something new. Well, they may start off painting something that they know, right? But then, because I usually tell them, follow the tail of the pony.
And that means,
That means, so at the end of a brush, there's a little bit of hair. So imagine that that's the tail of a pony, and it's not your hand pulling the pony, but the pony is leading. So allowing the pony, the brush, to lead the movement. So again, it's very
mhm,
sort of this experience of, you may go in there and maybe put a symbol in place, and then you're starting to decorate the symbol or whatever it is that you're starting to do. And then you're following the pony, and then the pony has a mind of its own.
yes, it
And when
does.
the pony has the mind of its own, that's when the sparks of surprise come through.
Yeah. And have you ever had in your own work or seen in your clients where the painting knew more than the person? In other words, The person has an idea in mind, and then what happens with the painting is different.
Every single time. Every single time. But this is true with it. So when clients come to look for me and to work with me, they bring me the CV of the person they want to be matched with or they want to be paired up with. And inevitably, it's like a painting. Inevitably, it ends up being a person that is completely not entirely unlike the values that they hold are the values that they hold, but the look, the personality, completely different from the CV that they presented. And the same thing happens when they're working with a canvas. They enter with, I've got this thing in my mind, and my caution is be open to receive what you're meant to receive. Be open to it not looking the way you see it in your mind. Be
Mm,
open to the surprise. Be open to the aha.
yeah. One of the ways I often will ask that of myself or clients that I'm working with is what wants to come through? Because then it's not about me and my agenda or my story. It's, oh, I'm listening for something else, not the tried and true response, but something maybe I don't even know yet.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very true. That's very true. Which is why I so love the painting process. For me, my husband makes fun of me. He'll come down to my studio and he'll look at a painting I'm working on and he goes like, "Stop there," because he knows that in 5 minutes if it comes down again, something else would have emerged for me, and whatever is there, it just gets painted over or gets, there's
Yeah.
something else that happens. So being willing, again, it's that whole idea of following the pony's tail. Like, where is the pony taking me? Where is this? What's emerging?
Yeah.
And how do I follow that? And what lesson is here? Not necessarily looking for the lessons, but it's just like,
Hmm.
ooh, I wonder what's down there. Ooh, I wonder what's over there. I
Yeah.
wonder what will happen if I do this. It's kind of this I wonder.
Yes. Oh, that's so good. And I'm curious as to your experience, but I often find that sometimes even for myself, but often for many clients, is they stop too soon. They'll get to a certain point where they're creating something and they'll say, I don't really like this. And they want to do something you like, leave it and start something fresh rather than just keep going. It's not, if they don't like something, they think, oh, this is the end. And they stop there.
Mm, yeah. But isn't that so human?
Yes.
Don't we all do that in
Yeah.
one way or another?
Yeah.
I have found that what's really helpful in those situations too. So typically with something like that, a client is coming to something that feels very true and very raw and vulnerable. And they may not on that day be ready to quote unquote go there. So I use that moment to let's go elsewhere. So maybe we're doing a drawing, or maybe we get off the canvas for a while and we go elsewhere. But then that creates enough sort of you pulling the threads away enough to create some more room, and then we
Hmm.
can go back to the canvas. I think it's really dangerous territory to try to sort of like press and force something when the individual's readiness is not there. I think
Hmm.
it's really important to honor an individual's pace.
That's such an important point. I remember taking a collage class many, many years ago, and I didn't like what I had done. So the instructor came over and I said, Jean, I just don't like this. So she started peeling. She didn't ask my permission. She just started peeling parts of the collage off. And at first, I had to push my jaw back. It's like, what are you doing? But she she must have intuitively known I was ready because after she did that and I looked at it, I thought, oh, that is so much better. So being able to subtract something as much as add something is equally valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, bringing things to the background, pulling things to the foreground. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I love that story. I wasn't sure where it was going to go, but I love that story that you ended up with something that felt truer to you,
Yeah.
because it
Yeah.
could have been this moment where she just basically came and said, well, if you don't like it, let's pull it apart, completely pull it apart. And then really played with your
Yeah.
resistance and your attachment to the thing that you'd created, right? It's
Yeah.
just, oh, like, I don't really go from like, ugh, I don't care about it and I don't like it, to like, whoa, Nelly, I really do. I am invested in this piece, right?
Right.
Really play with that, like that space.
Yeah. Yeah.
So really fun story.
And she was, if I remember correctly, as she was tearing these bits of paper off of the collage, I think she was saying, I wonder what would happen if we do this,
Mm,
right? The perfect entree.
yeah.
Excuse me. There's something I wanted to ask you about in terms of your relationship coaching. Something on your website really struck me where you said um, intimacy is an art. Can you talk about that a little?
Just as we listen with both inner eyes. Well, we don't listen with eyes, but we look with inner eyes. We have inner ears, maybe, inner ears and inner eyes. Um, and just as that moment of creativity that we allow ourselves is just the pause to create a heightened awareness of what's going on.
Mm,
That's what art is, right? To bring exquisite attention to a line, to a dot, to a color. We bring that kind of exquisite attention to each other.
mhm.
And that's why I would say that intimacy is an art, because it's exquisite attention.
Mm. Isn't so much of how we live enhanced by increasing our awareness?
Yes, and there's a lot said about awareness, and I understand and recognize it is definitely necessary. But oftentimes, people will gain awareness. They'll read a book, they'll take a class, and they'll work with a mentor, they'll work with a coach, and, and maybe stop before they're cooked, if you will, like you shared earlier. And then go around saying, well, I know that. I'm aware of that. I understand that.
Oh,
But this is a conceptual, cognitive thing, this awareness. You don't actually know it, because if you did, your experience in life, in your relationships, in your work would be vastly different, because that knowledge would be a part of who you are.
mm,
So there's awareness and then there's capacity. And capacity is what we build through practice, through dedication, through intentional um, discipline.
mm,
I look at the work that I do both with my creative endeavors, with my own relationship, with my clients, as a way of stepping into the dojo.
mhm.
We don't always want to go to the gym. We don't always want to step into the dojo. But we step into the dojo even when we're not in crisis. We think we only need to go to the dojo and like, yeah, our way through something. But we step into the dojo every day, whether we need it or we don't. And we practice our katas on the daily so that that capacity is built, so that when crisis comes, when conflict comes, because inevitably it will, you can count on the winds and the storms coming. But will your home be built on sand or will it be built on rock? And building and having awareness is like, oh, I know that, but building the house on sand. So when things hit the fan, you're swirling back into old places. And then you get to beat yourself up for being caught off guard again, reacting the same way when you knew it. Building capacity means stepping into the dojo, whether you need it or not, doing those practices deliberately, consciously, dedicatedly. So when the winds and the storms do come, you can remain at the center.
Nicely put. I think I had a different definition of awareness in mind, not so much of, oh, yeah, I know that, because as soon as we say that, we already are revealing that we don't. We don't know it in here. Regardless of what we call it, I think that ability to be present and to put ourselves in a position, as you say, of going into the dojo every day. What am I going to learn? Why am I here? You know, to build that capacity is a really nice way of putting it. And sometimes we still go down when the winds blow, but hey, that's life, right?
Well, the distinction is we may go down when the winds, if we're going into the dojo, let's say, we'll use that analogy, but if we're doing it on a regular basis, the winds and storms will come. We may get knocked down, but we'll be back up in a shorter and shorter
Right.
and shorter period of time.
Right.
It's not that we never get knocked down. We want to believe that there's this mythical space of happily ever after, or never thrown off my game after, or whatever you want to call it, when that place does not exist.
Yeah.
We are human beings, right? We get thrown off. But by being willing to build capacity, then we shorten the sort of the trajectory of getting knocked down and staying down.
So true. So if somebody listening to our podcast believed that they're not creative, what would you say to them? And what do you think they misunderstand about the nature of creativity?
Well, I think it's first the definition, right? Having a limited definition of what creativity is and seeing it in a art, sculpture, music kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
But as I said, I think at the beginning of our conversation, it's expand your capacity or expand your definition of creativity. Can you solve problems? Can you fix stuff? Can you plant a garden? Do you know, like my husband is a genius. He has this ability to know when flowers will bloom and what colors they are so that they get to talk to each other from other sides of the garden. Like, if that's not creativity, I don't know what is. He knows when to plant a radish, right? Like there are people who know how to fix cars, who are carpenters. Just, I think for those who don't see themselves as being creative, it's beginning to expand that definition for themselves to include so much more than just the arts.
Yes. Once they know that, they're off and running.
Yeah.
So we're coming to a close, unfortunately, on this conversation at the moment. But what I'd love you to share with people is what are you doing these days and where can they find you?
So these days, I am getting ready to teach a 6-week masterclass on my book, Unbreakable Us, Removing the Barriers to Love. And I'm simultaneously readying for a longer runway of a 3-day retreat on Lake George at Weowaka. So it's a 3-day women's retreat where we paint and connect and bring relational issues to the canvas.
Mm.
So that's kind of like more immediate. So the masterclass begins on April 1st, and the 3-day retreat is in July at the
Nice.
Weowaka Center for Women. And I can be found at joellelydon.com.
And some social media platforms, no doubt.
LinkedIn, Instagram. I kind of hang out on Instagram, not a whole lot, but it's Facebook and LinkedIn are my two preferred
Great.
platforms.
Great. Well, thank you so much for spending time with me today and the people who are listening or watching.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Really a delight and an honor.
Thank you. And thank you, those of you who are watching or listening. We appreciate your being here and look forward to seeing you on the next podcast. So thanks for coming.